watching Open, the Andre Agassi interview, a Tennis Channel Court Report special.
I'm standing in front of Andre's proudest achievement. It's the Andre Agassi College Preparatory Academy. Given Andre's lack of education, it's remarkable how much wisdom this high school dropout brings to the subject of education.
Yeah, how do you explain that? But I would say that I didn't have choice in my life. Part of the reason why I didn't have choice is because I didn't have an education. I didn't have, education gives you choices. It lets you discover yourself. It lets you understand what you care about, what you're connected towards, what draws you. And I didn't have that. And as a result, I didn't have a life that I chose. And I thought about so many kids in this world, starting in my community, that don't have a choice, that their life is predetermined because they don't have education. That's what led me into education. So now, a ninth grade dropout, don't confuse me with being smart. I provide education. I built this school to give kids who are destined for their tomorrow to look no different than their today a choice.
When advance word of Agassi's book hit the press, it jolted the tennis community like a lightning bolt, rapidly triggering a full spectrum of opinions. Rafael Nadal, quote, "Why is he saying this now that he is retired? It's a way of damaging the sport that makes no sense," unquote. Martina Navratilova, quote, "Shocking. Not as much shock that he did it as shock he lied about it and didn't own up to it," unquote. And Roger Federer, quote, "I am disappointed and I hope there are no more such cases in the future. Our sport must stay clean," unquote. You tell me your thoughts. I know that Martina Navratilova compared you to the Roger Clemens.
Right.
That seemed to really bother you. Rafa Nadal, Roger Federer, they don't understand why you would even bring it up. People are like, why didn't he just keep it to himself?
Yeah, and it's fair to ask the question why and to have that confusion. I'll take confusion. Hopefully after somebody reads this book, they'll understand why and that there's more power to this than the sensationalizing of one or two components. But as it relates to the actual testing and our sport is leading in this. This is 1997 we're talking about. We're talking about 13 years ago in the infancy of our testing. You're talking about a sport that as a result possibly of my case or others, who knows, decided that we're going to reach out outside our governance and get WADA, a third-party governing body, to oversee the integrity, to oversee protecting the integrity in our sport. They're the best in the business. They came in 1999, and our sport should be proud of how we go about protecting our players from athletes who are trying to cheat. The only thing I was doing was hurting myself. Should I have been penalized? 100%. Should I have admitted it at the time? 100%. I regret and I've lived ashamed of it. But for anybody to think that our sport isn't absolutely at the highest level of integrity when it comes to how we test, our players work tirelessly to make sure they live up to the highest standards, and they deserve a lot of respect for that.
If you would have gotten in trouble, perhaps, what if they still could find you to this day? Would you have told that story the same way?
Find me.
Or take away some slams? Whatever they think they could have done to you, would you still have been as open?
In 1997, I felt 141 in the world. I played 12 matches. I pulled out of 3 of the 4 Grand Slams. If you took that whole year and ripped it away from me, I could hardly be ranked, much less. So I have no problem. I want to get rid of that year anyhow.
Yeah, you're not.
That's
take it
my
away.
point.
No matter. Okay.
My road back was from the beginning.
How do you deal with critics who say, "Well, what else might he have done when he was playing the sport?"
Here's what I say. I say that in writing this book, I had so much more to lose than to gain. So what I talk about is not governed by my best interest. If it was, I would have done what some people are claiming I should have done, which is not said anything, which I never considered to be an option.
When we come back, you'll find out why Andre decided to reveal his darkest secrets. You're watching Open, the Andre Agassi interview, a Tennis Channel Court Report special. Welcome back to Open, The Andre Agassi interview, a Tennis Channel Court Report special. Anyone who's ever talked with Andre Agassi is struck by his remarkable memory. And so, as you'd expect, when addressing the low point and the high point of his career, Agassi speaks as if it all took place only yesterday.
I would say my worst moment on the court came when I was 141 in the world. I had been at a pretty dark time in my life, and I took a wild card into Stuttgart, and I lost to Todd Martin first round in a routine 6-3, 6-2 match, if my memory serves me correct. And I was a shadow myself. I no longer belonged out there. And the best moment I ever had on the tennis court was getting over that line in Paris, for my last of the 4 Grand Slams. Mm-hmm. It was a microcosm of the life I lived. I was, down in the end, 2 sets to love, and scared to death, and couldn't move. And
why is that? Why were you so scared? It almost as if, I know you talked about how the sports writers would label you and call you before you won your first slam, say that you weren't who you're supposed to be. Was it because, did you feel like you were in your head? Were you your own worst enemy?
Oh yeah, I was by far my own worst enemy. I was the toughest opponent I ever played against, and And I get on the court, and it was always clear to me that, losing felt so much worse than winning felt good. A win could only satisfy something, and it wasn't very deep, but a loss would cut to the bone. You question yourself. It was an imbalanced, ratio. And so getting out there in Paris in the biggest of moments, it just exaggerates that intensity, which is, if I lose this yet again, I've let this slip away, and I could have won it 10 years earlier, and if I, and then you get scared of winning too.
I think a lot of people who are born champions, whether you realize it or not, whether you have that drive, we always push ourselves to do more and more. I say we because I'm including myself in this, but I think what your biggest fear is what you face all the time. You talk about this love-hate relationship with tennis. How do you feel about tennis now?
It's not a love-hate relationship, it's a hate-love relationship.
Hate-love, explain that.
Well, I started hating the game for so many reasons. When winning or losing when you're a child, or a good practice or bad practice, meant you eat together as a family, or everybody grabs their plate and goes into separate rooms because nobody wants to deal with each other, that's a heavy load at 7 years old. It's your life is in the balance of this thing. And this thing is this thing called tennis is interfering with my relationship with my father. It's interfering with my relationship with myself. You don't like it. I didn't like it, and I could have literally just picked up and walked away. And I said, you know what? Maybe it's time I start figuring out how to attach new meanings to old tasks. Maybe I start playing for something else. Maybe I start playing for my school. Maybe I start figuring out how to take ownership of my life, and how I figure out how to choose this life, how to choose it, for it to be my choice. For the first time in my life, make it be your choice, and then that's what I did that night. It was a daily, effort for me, but that's when it started to change, and that's when tennis gave me my school. That's when tennis gave me my wife. That's when tennis gave me the chance to raise my children and to spend time with them, because I don't have to go out and work. I don't have to put myself through what a lot of people have to go through. Scales got more balanced.
I understand. Yeah, it's only a few pages of 400 or so. And I think for our viewers, Tennis Channel viewers, they will read your book with a different lens. They've watched you turn into, from, not even necessarily from amateur to professional, and they've watched your career. They really are your hardcore base. How are they supposed to react to this book, or what do you want them to take away from this book?
Well, I think there's a lot to take away from this book. I look forward to their reactions to it. And I think a lot of people wake up in life, in a life they didn't choose, in a life they find themselves in. I want them to have some inspiration, some tools. I think a lot of people wake up in a marriage that they don't want to be in. I want them to have some tools and some inspirations that tomorrow can actually be something they can control, they can change. There's a lot of teenagers out there who run the risk of stepping into the same pitfalls that I stepped into. Teenagers that might actually be in those pitfalls as we speak. So this book is designed to impact millions that I'll never meet. And if that happens, if it can help one person, it's a huge success.
And as you'd expect from a man who's accomplished so much, Andre Agassi has courageously told his life story with trademark power and admirable candor. Like its author, Open is direct, thoughtful, and compelling. And it's certainly not the last we've heard from one of the most popular figures in tennis history. For this Tennis Channel Court Report special, I'm Carrie Champion. See you next time.